Hi, my name is Mark. As you can see, we have a little bit of a different video today. I know I say that a lot, but this time I guess it's pretty different than our regular guitar lesson-oriented videos. As you could probably see by the title, we're making a song today. Or at least we're starting one. Those of you who follow my channel know that sometimes I do these composing lessons with songwriting tips and lessons about chords and melodies, chord substitution, stuff like that. And even though I'll still keep doing these sorts of videos, for those who haven't watched the channel trailer, I decided I'd show you how I make my own songs, because I think this way you can exactly see how I think about this sort of stuff, how I apply certain concepts and stuff like that, and maybe I can inspire you to do different things in your own songs. And as you've been able to see by my screen capture, even though I play the guitar, I'm on a notation software, and if you want to learn more about how and why I use it, I suggest to check out this video right here. I think it's really important for any of you who are either trying to get into songwriting and composing, or even just want to expand their horizons, I guess. In this case, I have this little section right here. Again, if you haven't watched and don't want to watch my notation video, this is something I did in that video, and we can listen to it right now. Personally, I would divide it into these two sections. The main riff, which is this part right here, and then we have this sort of chorus-ish melody part right here. And before we keep going, I just want to say please subscribe to my channel. You probably know that YouTube's been acting a little bit weird lately. Even if you subscribe to a channel, those channel's videos may really not show up in your subscription box. And even if you ring the notification bell thingy below, you still really may not be notified of that channel's content. So if you want to stay tuned to my channel, not only do I suggest subscribing and turning on all the notifications, but also following me on social media. Not only do I post some exclusive stuff there, like improvised solos and jamming over backing tracks, and generally wherever I'm up to at the moment, but I always post it about my videos. Links for the usual suspects will be below, but in general, at Mark Guitar. And since you're done there, please consider leaving a like and perhaps share this video on social media. I highly appreciate it. Oh, and before we start the composing process itself, I just want to say that if you guys want to take this riff and or this melody and try to make your own version of it, it could be really cool. I'd really like to see what you guys can come up with. And if you have any suggestions for chords or in which direction you think the song should go in, leave them in the comment section below and I'll take those into consideration. Okay, so the first thing I think we should do is do a little bit of house cleaning, like setting up the staff. In the last video, I went with just the regular C major staff, but in this case, since I'm filling the song in C minor, I just changed the staff to either C minor or E flat major, something like it, and here changing it for a bass clef. Again, this is not really something that you need to do, but it's something that I prefer to do because if for some reason I want to send this to any musician, it's best to have these sorts of things organized. And I am also changing some of the notes. For instance, in this case it was marking it as a G sharp. And since we're in C major, it's not really G sharp, it's an A flat. But again, it's more a little nitpicky stuff that you may not really care about, but I do, so I'm going to do it. And another thing I'm thinking about is that I don't really want to start the song with that riff. I want to have an intro, so I added these extra measures. And for the intro, I'm thinking of just playing these big chords that sort of outline a chord progression that fits in with the song. Maybe doing some contrary motion. It's a little cliche, but since the song is in C minor, let's perhaps start with a C minor chord. I'll do it in the bass clef. I think that sounds nice. Again, C minor chord. Effectively, it's like a C minor 11, A flat 13, and I'd say this is sort of like an F dominant 7th with a 9th on it, and you can see the contrary motion. We're going down on the bass, and we go up in the last little chord, and in the treble side we go up, and then we go down. Usually there's this little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily say controversy, but people many times say, oh, you gotta do contrary motion. If you just do the same motion, it will become boring and whatever. I think that's a little bit extreme. If you think it sounds good, just do it. But experimenting with different things, I think may be interesting. Here's these 4 chords. And now I think we can do a similar thing, but this time do it more chromatically. We can start again with the C minor chord, and I think we should keep the contrary motion, but maybe this time we can do the bass going up and the treble side going down. Again, that might be interesting. I said I wanted to add some extra chords, but then this time do the contrary motion. But this time when doing the contrary motion, I wanted it to go in opposite ways, right? And that's what I did. I started again with the C minor, and I raised the C for a D, and I lowered the E flat for a D. And since we have two Ds right now, I thought, okay, if we're still in that sort of C minor-ish area, we can think of those Ds as maybe the third of a B flat major chord, which would work alright. We can maybe think of it as a fifth of a G, which would also work alright, either a G major or a G minor. Again, keeping with that same sort of contrary motion vibe, I raised the E flat for an F. You can see I also dropped the C, I dropped it for a B, and because I still kept the G, and having D, F, G, and B, we got this G dominant 7/5, which I think works well. This next chord is a little bit more clustered. As you can see, the notes are E flat, G, A flat, B flat, and C. And we can think of this chord in a couple of different ways. We can think about it as a sort of E flat major chord, because we have the notes E flat, G, and B flat, just with a fourth and a sixth as extensions. Or we can maybe think of it as a C minor chord, again C minor, G, and E flat, with a minor seventh and a minor sixth. In this case, I'd be more inclined for the C minor version, because the previous chord was a G dominant 7th chord, which is used to resolve to another chord. And this may bring out an important question to many of you guys, which is, what the hell am I actually doing? Am I using theory to write the song, or am I using my ears, or do I have parts written down? And I can say that even though I am using theory, I'm mostly using my ears. For instance, if you take a look at the next chord, this next chord right here, which has an E, an A flat, a B flat, and a C, is definitely a weird chord, right? If you take a look at it, by having the notes C, B flat, and E, we have this sort of C dominant 7th chord, but it's sort of incomplete because we don't really have the 5th. We don't really have the G. We have this A flat, which I guess can make out a C dominant 7 flat 13, which again is a chord that isn't in the scale. But because I'm using my ears and I was thinking of contrary motion, the correct chord in this case would be raising that E to an F, and we would have this sort of F minor chord with a fourth on it. But I was honestly thinking of that E to then resolve to the next chord, which is again sort of an F minor chord, which is almost a cluster sort of a thing. I think of it as almost functioning as an F minor chord. Again, it doesn't, because we don't really have the 5th. We should raise that B flat to a C, but by having that B flat, sort of having the chord almost suspended in a way, it makes you wanting more. Again, if every chord sort of fills the same role, like in this case, with the G major going to a C minor chord, even though this is a fancy C minor chord, it doesn't really feel as resolved as just going. But I think you can still get the point, not only by doing this chromatically, but also because since we're making the upper structure a little bit more condensed, I guess, and I mentioned that I was sort of hearing this chord right here, because as some of you might know, when you have a major chord, dominant 7th chord, augmented chord, things like that, even though that's not all they do, they can be used as a way to resolve to their 4 chord. So in this case, it is, as we mentioned before, sort of a C dominant 7th chord, and we can use a C dominant 7th chord to resolve to its 4th. Well, which note is the 4th of C? It's F. So by having this sort of C dominant 7th chord, again, sort of augmented-ish, it it resolves well to our almost F minor chord. It sort of gives it that tension that I later on want to release so that we can get to the proper riff itself. Again, don't forget that the riff that makes up the song, it's a very fast-paced riff, and because I wanted an intro and didn't just want to start with the riff, the intro itself needs to reach enough energy for you to get to the riff so that it doesn't really feel empty. And I don't know about you guys, but to me it is sounding a little bit dark right now. I thought of lifting it up a little bit by changing our almost F minor chord to an almost F major chord, sort of giving our C minor a C Dorian-ish vibe. Again, we're not strictly in C minor, we went for this sort of C harmonic minor, maybe C melodic minor, if you're into that sort of stuff. And because of this C augmented dominant 7 sort of thing, we're not necessarily stuck in C minor, but still I thought maybe giving a Dorian vibe may lift it a little bit. Even though in this case, I think it's a little bit too clustered, maybe we can add the 5th back in. And now this is an interesting thing I like to do, because I was thinking of maybe resolving back to C minor, and the best way to resolve to a C minor is again as that sort of G dominant 7th, G major, G augmented sort of 5-to-1 resolution. And I thought, okay, I'm in F major, a cool way to resolve to G major to then resolve to C minor is to get another 5 chord. So I decided to add this sort of D major vibe. Again, it's still a little bit closer. Here you have the F sharp and you have the G, which is a 4th. But again, we're trying to keep the tension a little bit. We don't really want it to resolve completely. And in fact, something we can do right here, if we add the C, not the D, the C. If we add the C to that almost F major chord that we had before, it kind of makes the transition between F major and D major a little bit more easy, because we can walk from B flat, C, and D. And honestly, for the next chord, I just traded the G for a C to make the resolution a little bit more obvious. And I thought of next going to that G dominant 7, G major as we mentioned before. And you may have noticed in the video that in this last chord I went for a couple of revisions of different inversions and different extensions, and I came up with this one, which even though would resolve well to our initial C minor chord, is not really what I'm audiating. It's not really what I think sounds and fits in right with the song. And for those of you who follow my channel since back in the day, you might remember this video I did about baby metal, because back then I was also working with the song, and I thought, okay, maybe I should do this chord or maybe this chord, and thinking of possible chords to go with that weren't really the cliche sounding chords, even though the chord I thought sounded good was the cliche chord. But if you think it sounds good, maybe it's not that much of a cliche. And even if it is, it's the most important that you think the chord you want to go next, or the chord you think you're going, or the melody or whatever, sounds good. Not necessarily go for the last used chord or the fanciest chord or whatever. So here's what we're doing. We have this sort of D major going to a D dominant 7th, and the D dominant 7th will theoretically drop us to a G chord. But it can also do this. We can go from a D to an E flat major chord. We kind of modulate it to this D Phrygian vibe. Trading the 5th for a minor 6th, which I think sounds good. And because this chord is sort of an augmented chord, I don't know about you guys, but I think it works rather fine. And I'm thinking of doing like 9/8 bar, because now if you listen to it, we have a countdown, we have this chord lasts 4 bars, and that last little 8th note, so that we can do that little pickup line for the main riff of the song. I think it sounds cool. Maybe we can add an E flat or something. I just wanted to add something in the bass to give it a little bit more of an oomph. And maybe we can keep this chord on this bar and add some extra tension. When we record the song later on, I think it might be cool to have like this, to have this intro with like some swelling chords and stuff like that, and then have this sort of break where everything stops and you just get like either a guitar or maybe a violin or something, and we have this riff playing by itself, maybe with a filter on it, and then start the song properly and this chorus thing right here. Again, I talked about this in my last video about notation. Again, check that video if you haven't already, but this is sort of how I do my demos. I'm not really trying to orchestrate things in here. I mean, I could just grab all the instruments I usually use to record a song and have all the parts written down right here, but for now I just want this basic version of a song and think, okay, does it work just like this? And if it works solely on piano, then it probably works when we add extra stuff. Before we finish the video, I'm just going to add this extra part right here, because I think it's probably going to sound cool to have this higher part. Okay, so here's the last part I added, just to, again, add a little bit of extra motion. I said before I don't usually orchestrate in demos too much, but this is the exception I mentioned before, which is I only do it unless I'm listening to the song and I audiate it like really loudly. In this case, when I was listening to these chords by themselves, I was already listening to this rhythm of and my mouse battery is very low, good to know. So this is one of those cases where I add that extra part, just because there's this possibility that the next time I work on this song is a bunch of time later on. Maybe later on I'm not really feeling this part, and by notating it right now, the next time I take a look at this, even if I don't really enjoy it as much, at least I have it notated and I can erase it if I want to, if I don't really feel like it adds to the song. But if I feel it does, it's already there. So I added this little extra line. And you can see it sort of shifts around here. The pedal note changes from a C to a B. It comes back to a C. And it then changes a little bit. Because we add an extra note, now we're sort of arpeggiating the chord below. We're not necessarily doing a pedal point sort of a thing. But because the rhythm is the same, it sort of works. So let's hear the whole song together and finish the video. I still have a couple of doubts about this part right here, because I think it changes a little bit too much. It's a little bit too bright for me, but again, it's not like it sounds bad, it's just a little bit out of my comfort zone, but that can be interesting. So yeah, we'll leave it at this. I'll try to release one of these song composing videos like once every week, but I still don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Tell me if you like the series, you think it's an interesting idea or not. Again, if you have any thoughts or you want me to explain something I did in this video, just leave them in the comment section below. And if you want to grab one of these parts and maybe start to build a song of your own, either do a video of it or maybe send it to me. I'd really like to see what you guys can come up with. But yeah, tell me what you think. Was there something I missed, something I should have said? And if you have any suggestions for videos, I have this dedicated series called Gate, You Ask I Teach. I know it's a pretty boring, generic, and self-explanatory title, but as you can probably guess, and as the name implies, in that series I pretty much teach anything you guys leave in the comment section below, guitar and or music related, of course. So if there's something you want me to talk about, just leave it in the comment section below with the hashtag Gate. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this isn't exactly my regular type of videos. I usually do guitar lesson-y stuff, but this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So if you play guitar, and even if you don't, if you play any other instrument, I bet there's probably something interesting you can learn from my other videos, and there's already a little bit of a back catalog going on, so check it out if you can, and yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on all the notifications. Perhaps follow me on social media and share this video on social media. Leave a comment for my Yate series, check out some of my other videos, and cheers!